If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Delphi case series. This is episode 48, Unsealed. We will be looking at the probable cause affidavit and the implications contained therein. What it all means regarding Richard Allen, what it all means for the case, what it all means for potential co-conspirators or co-perpetrators in this crime. And that's even if Allen himself was involved, which some people believe he was not. He's being set up as some kind of patsy, either as part of a criminal ring where he was involved with other criminal activities, or as not even that, and that he really isn't involved in any type of criminal activity. There's all sorts of beliefs out there, but here on Mindshock, as the motto goes, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. So all we can do is logically examine every piece of evidence and logically examine every single theory for veracity. As always, if you find the Mindshock podcast interesting and informative, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can also become a member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topological analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. Okay, so let's go through this probable cause affidavit that is released. Indie Star posted this on their website. Obviously, it's been posted in many places. This is November 29th, 2022. Court documents released in Delphi murder case. An ejected 40 cal shell was found near one of the victim's bodies. Ties suspect Richard Allen to the 2017 killings of Delphi teens Libby German or Abby Williams. It should be I guess it's a typo here on IndyStar. According to the probable cause affidavit released Tuesday, the tool marks on the shell match a pistol owned by Allen, according to the affidavit, which had some redactions. In an interview with police, Allen said he never let anyone borrow or use his pistol, according to the affidavit. Allen had no explanation how a shell ejected from his sidearm was found at the scene of the crime, according to the affidavit. The affidavit indicates it has 8 pages, but only 7 were released Tuesday. Read the probable cause affidavit here. So we're going to look at it. But again, if he was just shooting his gun in the woods, I mean, how sloppy would someone have to be to leave that shell? Or walk muddy and bloody, as what will be stated here? None of this really makes any sense. I mean, you would think things would start making sense with document released, but it still doesn't really make sense. But let's look at this. State of Indiana, Carroll County. Probable cause affidavit. I, the undersigned affiant, submit the following information pursuant to IC 35-33-7-2 as a sworn affidavit setting forth the facts and circumstances known to law enforcement of Carroll County as the basis for probable cause to arrest without a warrant or to establish probable cause for issuance of an arrest warrant for the above-named defendant, Richard Allen. That the facts and circumstances described below would be sufficient basis for a person of reasonable caution and prudence to believe that the accused has committed or attempted to commit the offense or offenses described, and that if arrest without a warrant would be authorized under IC 35-33-1-1. That the hearsay statements of witnesses contained herein are considered reliable and credible due to the witness's personal knowledge and or are corroborated by the totality of the circumstances. That on February 14th, 2017, victim 1 and 2 were found deceased in the woods approximately 0.2 miles northeast of the Monon High Bridge in Carroll County. Their bodies were located on the north side of the Deer Creek. At the time, the Monon High Bridge Trail was approximately 1 mile gravel trail terminating at the Monon High Bridge. The Monon High Bridge is an abandoned railroad trestle, approximately 0.25 miles long, spanning the Deer Creek and Deer Creek Valley on the southeast end of the trail. Approximately 0.7 miles northwest on the trail from the northwestern edge of the Monon High Bridge is the Freedom Bridge, which is a pedestrian bridge spanning State Road 25. Approximately 350 feet west of Freedom Bridge was a former railroad overpass over Old State Road 25, also known as County Road 300 North. The trail terminates just west of the former railroad overpass. The majority of the trail is in a wooded area with a steep embankment on the south side of the trail. The entirety of the trail and the location of the girls' bodies were and are located in Carroll County, Indiana. Through interviews, reviews of electronic records, and review of video at the Hoosier Harvester, investigators believe victim 1 and 2 were dropped off across from the Mears farm at 1:49 p.m. on February 13, 2017, by Redacted. The Mears farm is located on the north side of County Road 300 North near an entrance to the trails. A video from victim 2's phone shows that at 2:13 p.m., victim 1 and victim 2 encountered a male subject on the southeast portion of the Mononhigh Bridge. The male ordered the girls, quote, guys down the hill, end quote. No witnesses saw them after this time. No outgoing communications were found on victim 2's phone after this time. Their bodies were discovered February 14, 2017. The video recovered from victim 2's phone shows victim 1 walking southeast on the Mononhigh Bridge while a male subject wearing a dark jacket and jeans walks behind her. As the male subject approaches victim 1 and 2, one of the victims mentions gun. Near the end of the video, a male is seen and heard telling the girls, guys down the hill. The girls then begin to proceed down the hill and the video ends. A still photograph taken from the video and the guys down the hill audio was subsequently released to the public to assist investigators in identifying the male. Victim 1 and victim 2's deaths were ruled as homicides. Clothes were found in the Deer Creek belonging to victim 1 and 2 south of where their bodies were located. Now again, let's keep in mind, I bring this up all the time, both sides of the creek were searched according to searchers. And even a heat-seeking drone, a thermal imaging drone, was flown that first afternoon, the day before their bodies were discovered. So not only were there no heat signatures, where there would have been because it was only a couple hours, and sometimes even heat dissipation, it takes a couple hours to even start the heat dissipation, so the bodies could be almost as warm as when alive for up to a certain amount of time. You could check out the podcast. I read directly from scientific literature and the actual basis for which all time of death estimates are established from. But apparently nobody saw the clothes in the creek either. That's kind of weird if it was there the whole time. Very, very weird. But let's continue here. There was also a .40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet away from victim 2's body, between victim 1 and victim 2's bodies. The round was unspent and had extraction marks on it. Interviews were conducted with 3 juveniles, redacted. They advised that they were on the Mononhigh Bridge Trail on February 13, 2017. They advised they were walking on the trail towards Freedom Bridge to go home when they encountered a male walking from Freedom Bridge toward the Mononhigh Bridge. Redacted described the male as kind of creepy and advised he was wearing like blue jeans, like really light blue jacket, and his hair was gray, maybe a little brown, and he did not really show his face. She advised the jacket was a duck canvas type jacket. Redacted advised she said hi to the male, but he just glared at them. She recalled him being in all black and had something covering his mouth. She described him as not very tall, with a bigger build. She said he was not bigger than 5'10". Redacted advised he was wearing a black hoodie, black jeans, and black boots. She stated he had his hands in his pockets. Redacted showed investigators photographs she took on her phone while she was on the trail that day. The photographs included a photo of the Mononhigh Bridge taken at 12:43 p.m. and another one taken at 1:26 p.m. of the bench east of the Freedom Bridge. Redacted advised after she took the photo of the bench, they started walking back towards the Freedom Bridge. She advised that was when they encountered the man who matched the description of the photograph taken from victim 2's video. Redacted described the man she encountered on the trail as wearing a blue or black windbreaker jacket. She advised the jacket had a collar and that he had his hood up from the clothing underneath his jacket. She advised he was wearing baggy jeans and was taller than her. She advised her head came up to approximately his shoulder. She advised Redacted said hi to the man and that he said nothing back. She stated he was walking with a purpose, like he knew where he was going. She stated he had his hands in his pockets and kept his head down. She advised she did not get a good look at his face, but believed him to be a white male. The girls advised after encountering the male, they continued their walk across Freedom Bridge and the old railroad bridge over Old State Route 25. Investigators spoke with Redacted, who advised she was on the trails February 13, 2017. Video from the Hoosier Harvest Store captured Redacted's vehicle traveling eastbound at 1:46 p.m. toward the entrance across from the Mears farm. Redacted advised she saw 4 juvenile females walking on the bridge over Old State Road 25 as she was driving underneath on her way to park. Redacted advised there were no other cars parked across from the Mears farm where she parked. She advised she walked to the Monon High Bridge and observed a male matching the one from the victim two's video. She described the male she saw as a white male wearing blue jeans and a blue jacket. She advised he was standing on the first platform of the Monon High Bridge, approximately 50 feet from her. She advised she turned around at the bridge and continued her walk. She advised approximately halfway between the bridge and the parking area across from the Mears farm, she passed two girls walking toward the Monon High Bridge. She advised she believed the girls were victims 1 and 2. Video from the Hoosier Harvester shows at 1:49 p.m. a white car matching Redacted's vehicle traveling away from the entrance across from the Mears farm. Redacted advised she finished her walk and saw no other adults other than the male on the bridge. Her vehicle is seen on the Hoosier Harvester video at 2:14 p.m., leaving westbound from the trails. Redacted advised that when she was leaving, she noted a vehicle was parked in an odd manner at the Child Protective Services building. She said it was not odd for vehicles to be parked there, but she noticed it was odd because of the manner it was parked, backed in near the building. Investigators received a tip from Redacted in which he stated he was on his way to Delphi on State Road 25 around 2:10 p.m. on February 13, 2017. He observed a purple PT Cruiser, or a small SUV-type vehicle parked on the south side of the old CPS building. He stated it appeared as though it was backed in to conceal the license plate of the vehicle. Redacted both drew diagrams of where they saw the vehicle parked, and their diagrams generally matched as to the area the vehicle was parked and the manner in which it was parked. Redacted advised he remembered seeing a smaller dark-colored car parked at the old CPS building. He described it as possibly being a smart car. Redacted's vehicle was seen leaving at 2:28 p.m. on the Hoosier Harvester video. Investigators spoke with Redacted, who stated she was traveling east on 300 North on February 13, 2022, and observed a male subject walking west on the north side of 300 North away from the Monon High Bridge. Redacted advised that the male subject was wearing a blue-colored jacket and blue jeans and was muddy and bloody. She further stated that it appeared he had gotten into a fight. Investigators were able to determine from watching the video from the Hoosier Harvester that Redacted was traveling on CR 300 North at approximately 3:57 p.m. Through interviews, electronic data, photographs, and video from the Hoosier Harvester, investigators determined that there were other people on the trail that day after 2:13 p.m. Those people were interviewed, and none of those individuals encountered the male subject referenced above, witnessed by the juvenile girls, Redacted and Redacted. Further, none of those individuals witnessed Victim 1 and Victim 2. Investigators reviewing prior tips encountered a tip narrative from an officer who interviewed Richard Allen in 2017. That narrative stated, Mr. Allen was on the trail between 1:30 and 3:30. He parked at the old Farm Bureau building and walked to the new Freedom Bridge. While at the Freedom Bridge, he saw 3 females. He noted one was taller and had brown or black hair. He did not remember description, nor did he speak with them. He walked from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. He did not see anybody, although he stated he was watching a stock ticker on his phone as he walked. He stated that there were vehicles parked at the High Bridge trailhead, however, did not pay attention to them. He did not take any photos or video. His cell phone did not list an IMEI, but did have the following. Potential follow-up information. Who were the 3 girls walking in the area of the Freedom Bridge? Investigators believe Mr. Allen was referring to the old Child Protective Services building there and was not a Farm Bureau building in the area, nor had there been. Investigators believe the females he saw included Redacted and Redacted due to the time that they were leaving the trail, the time he reported getting to the trail, and the descriptions the 3 females gave. Investigators discovered Richard Allen owned 2 vehicles in 2017. A 2016 black Ford Focus and a 2006 gray Ford 500. Investigators observed a vehicle that resembled Allen's 2016 Ford Focus on the Hoosier Harvester video at 1:27 p.m., traveling westbound on CR 300 North in front of the Hoosier Harvester, which coincided with his statement that he arrived around 1:30 p.m. at the trails. Investigators note witnesses described the vehicle parked at the former Child Protective Services building as a PT Cruiser, small SUV, or smart car. Investigators believe those descriptions are similar in nature to a 2016 Ford Focus. And a quick aside here, again, just to reiterate, some people online are speculating that Tony Klein's mother has a purple PT Cruiser. Not to be confused with Keegan Kline, who supposedly had no vehicles and did not drive. In October 13th, 2022, Richard Allen was interviewed again by investigators. He advised he was on the trails February 13, 2017. He stated he saw juvenile girls on the trails east of the Freedom Bridge and that he went onto the Monon High Bridge. Richard Allen further stated he went out onto the Monon High Bridge to watch the fish. Later in his statements, he said he walked out to the first platform on the bridge. He stated he then walked back, sat on a bench on the trail, and then left. He stated he parked his car on the side of an old building. He told investigators that he was wearing blue jeans and a blue or black Carhartt jacket with a hood. So he didn't even know if he had a blue or black jacket on himself. Interesting. He advised he may have been wearing some type of head covering as well. He further claimed he saw no one else except for the juvenile girls he saw east of the Freedom Bridge. He told investigators that he owns firearms and that they are at his home. Richard M. Allen's wife, Kathy Allen, also spoke to investigators. She confirmed that Richard did have guns and knives at his residence. She also stated that Richard still owns a blue Carhartt jacket. October 13th, 2022, investigators executed a search warrant of Richard Allen's residence. Among other items, officers located jackets, boots, knives, and firearms, including a Sig Sauer model P226, 40 cal pistol with serial number U625627. Between October 14, 2022 and October 19, 2022, the Indiana State Police Laboratory performed an analysis on Allen's 6-hour model P226. The laboratory performed a physical examination and classification of the firearm, function test, barrel and overall length measurement, test firing, ammunition component characterization, microscope comparison, and NIBIN. The laboratory determined that the unspent round located within 2 feet of victim 2's body had been cycled through Richard Allen's Sig Sauer model P226. The laboratory remarked, "An identification opinion is reached when the evidence exhibits an agreement of class characteristics and a sufficient agreement of individual marks. Sufficient agreement is related to the significant duplication of random, striated, impressed marks as evidenced by the correspondence of a pattern or combination of patterns of surface contours. The interpretation of identification is subjective in nature and based on relevant scientific research and the reporting examiner's training and experience." Investigators then ran the firearm and found that the firearm was purchased by Richard Allen in 2001. Richard Allen voluntarily came to the Indiana State Police Post on October 26, 2022. He spoke with investigators and stated that he never allowed anyone to use or borrow the 6-hour model P226 firearm. When asked about the unspent bullet, he did not have an explanation of why the bullet was found between the bodies of Victim 1 and Victim 2. He again admitted that he was on the trail, but denied knowing Victim 1 or 2 and denied any involvement in their murders. Carroll County Sheriff's Department Detective Redacted has been part of the investigation since it started in 2017. He had an opportunity to review and examine evidence gathered in this investigation. Detective Redacted, along with other investigators, believe the evidence gathered shows that Richard Allen is the male subject seen on the video from Victim 2's phone who forced the victims down the hill. Further, that the victims were forced down the hill by Richard Allen and led to the location where they were murdered. Through the statements and photographs of the juvenile females and the statement of Redacted and Redacted, who were at the southeast edge of the trail at 12:43 p.m., east of the Freedom Bridge at 1:26 p.m., and walked across the former railroad overpass over Old State Road 25 after 1:26 p.m. and before 1:46 p.m. They walked the entirety of the trail and observed only one person, an adult male. Redacted's vehicle is seen on the Hoosier Harvester video at 1:46 p.m. and leaving at 2:14 p.m., and she stated she only saw one adult male. Redacted and Redacted described the male in similar manners, wearing similar clothing, leading investigators to believe that all four saw the same male individual. Investigators believe that the male observed by Redacted and Redacted is the same male depicted in the video from Victim 2's phone due to the descriptions of the male by the four females matching the male in the video. Furthermore, Victim 2's video was taken at 2:13 p.m. and Redacted saw only one male while she was on the trail from approximately 1:46 p.m. to 2:14 p.m. Investigators believe Richard Allen was the male seen by Redacted and Redacted and the male seen in Victim 2's video. Richard Allen told investigators he was on the trail from 1:30 to 3:30 that day. Video from the Hoosier Harvester shows a vehicle that matches the description of Richard Allen's vehicle passing at 1:27 p.m. towards the former CPS building. The clothing he told investigators he was wearing matched the clothing of the male in Victim 2's video and the clothing descriptions provided by Redacted and Redacted. A vehicle matching the description of his 2016 Ford Focus is seen at around 2:10 p.m., 2:14 p.m., and 2:28 p.m. at the former CPS building. Through his own admissions, Richard Allen walked the trails and eventually hiked to the Monon High Bridge and walked out onto the Monon High Bridge. A male subject matching Richard Allen's description was not seen on the trail after 2:13 p.m. Investigators identified other individuals on the trails, or CR 300 North, between 2:30 p.m. and 4:11 p.m. None of these individuals saw a male subject matching the description of Richard Allen on the trail. Furthermore, Richard Allen stated that he only saw 3 girls on the trail who investigators believe to be redacted. Investigators believe Richard Allen was not seen on the trail after 2:13 p.m. because he was in the woods with victim 1 and 2. An unspent 40 cal round between the bodies of victim 1 and 2 was forensically determined to have been cycled through Richard Allen's 6-hour model P226. The 6-hour model P226 was found at Richard Allen's residence, and he admitted to owning it. Investigators were able to determine that he had owned it since 2001. Richard Allen stated he had not been on that property where the unspent round was found, that he did not know the property owner, and that he had no explanation as to why a round cycled through his firearm would be at that location. Furthermore, he stated that he never allowed anyone to use or borrow the 6-hour model P226. Investigators believe that after the victims were murdered, Richard Allen returned to his vehicle by walking down CR 300 North. Investigators believe he was seen by Redacted walking back to his vehicle on CR 300 North with clothes that were muddy and bloody. Redacted, along with investigators, believe the statements made by the witnesses because the statements corroborate the timeline of the death of the 2 victims as well as coincide with the admissions made by Richard Allen. Further, the accounts relayed by Redacted and Redacted are similar in nature, and timestamps on the photographs taken by Redacted correspond to the times the juvenile females said they were on the trail and saw the male individual. Okay, so there we have it. Now let's look at a summary of this timeline. We'll go to Reddit for this. So let's look at the timeline laid out here in the Probable Cause Affidavit. Now, is there really anything that damning in this, and why did they want it to remain sealed? Supposedly there are underage witnesses, which is fine. You redact the names. I mean, it's kind of weird how they just wanted this thing sealed. But let's look at it. On the Delphi murders subreddit, Important Rope actually laid this out really well here in a very concise fashion. I've seen some complaints about the PCA being weak evidence. It really isn't once you start to lay it out and put it together. People want to hand wave and dismiss eyewitness accounts as unreliable, but they become a lot more reliable once you have digital evidence, photos with timestamps. Although, again, is that timestamp on when it was put on Snapchat as opposed to when it was taken? Video, surveillance cameras, and Richard Allen's own testimony to back them up. The timeline as laid out in the PCA goes like this. At 12:43, 3 juvenile witnesses take a photo of the High Bridge. At 1:26, the juvenile witnesses take a photo of the bench east of the Freedom Bridge. 1:27, a vehicle resembling Richard Allen's 2016 Ford Focus is seen on the Hoosier Harvester video, traveling westbound towards the old CPS building. 1:30, Richard Allen says he parked at the old Farm Bureau building. There is no old Farm Bureau building and never was, so this is believed to be the old CPS building. 1:37 approximately. After taking the bench photo, the juvenile witnesses encounter a king of creepy male walking on the trail as they head towards the Freedom Bridge to go home. Time is estimated by when the girls are later seen by witness 4, whose car is on camera at 1:46, and by the time given in Richard Allen's statement about when he arrived and the video showing a car matching his Ford Focus arriving. Witness 1 describes him wearing a really light blue jacket and his hair was gray and a little brown. Didn't really show his face. Let me repeat that part again. Didn't really show his face. Jacket was a duck canvas type jacket and didn't really show his face. Witness 2 describes him as wearing all black and had something covering his mouth. He said he was not very tall and had a bigger build, not bigger than 5'10". Witness 3 says he was wearing a black hoodie, black jeans, and black boots and had his hands in his pockets. Interesting. So all 3 witnesses have a different description, which is kind of weird. Unknown which of the 3 took the bench photo, but she goes on to say the man they encountered matched the description of the man in the video from the victim's video. Described the man as wearing a blue or black windbreaker jacket with his hood up from the clothing underneath his jacket. Advised he was wearing baggy blue jeans and was taller than her. Said he was walking with a purpose and had his hands in his pocket and kept his head down. Did not get a good look at his face. So apparently nobody saw his face here. They meet no one else on the trail, just one adult male. Richard Allen admits to meeting 3 juveniles on the trail, says he met no one else, says he was looking down watching a stock ticket on his phone. 146, witness 4's car, apparently an adult woman, is shown on the Hoosier Harvester's security camera traveling eastbound towards the entrance from the Mears farm. Said she saw 4 juvenile females walking across the bridge over Old State Road 25. No other cars were parked across from the Mears farm where she parked. 149. Abby and Libby are dropped off at the Mears farm near an entrance to the trails. This is confirmed by the white car that dropped them off being caught on the Hoosier Harvester camera. I don't know about confirmed. Backed up. 152, witness 4 walked to the high bridge, estimated 6-minute walk, and observed a male matching the description of the man in the victim's video. Described him as a white male wearing blue jeans and a blue jean jacket. She said he was on the first platform of the high bridge, approximately 50 feet from her. She turned around and continued her walk. Says she only met one adult male on her walk. Investigators believe this to be the same male the juveniles encountered. Also believe it to be the man in the victim's video. The thing that's weird here, I mean, there's just a handful, there's just a couple of these people and that's it. What happened to the dozens and dozens of people walking the trail on this unusually warm day in the middle of the day? That doesn't really match earlier reports. Unless those were all wrong as well. I mean, I don't know. Richard Allen admits he went onto the high bridge to watch the fish. Says he walked out to the first platform, then walked back, sat on a bench on the trail, and then left. He told investigators he was wearing blue jeans and a blue or black Carhartt jacket with a hood. He advised he may have been wearing some type of head covering as well. Roughly between 1:40 and 2:10, we know Richard Allen arrived around 1:30 and would have had to walk to the bridge. Richard Allen claims he has spent some time sitting on a bench on the trail. Witness 4 is seen leaving on camera at 2:14, and she saw a man matching Richard Allen's description on the bridge when she walked to it. 155, witness 4 says about halfway between the bridge and the parking area, she passes 2 girls walking towards the high bridge. She believed they were Abby and Libby. So in the past, people have speculated why nobody saw them. So we have one witness here that potentially saw them. 155. Estimated time as halfway between bridge and parking area. At 2:10, witness 5 says he saw a purple PT Cruiser or small SUV type vehicle parked on the south side of the old CPS building. Appeared it was backed in to conceal the license plate. Now, here's an interesting point. Some people are speculating online that Tony Klein, his mother, has a purple PT Cruiser. That's speculation only online. I don't know if anybody's verified that. Again, this is Mindshock. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. There's no shortage of triggered goofs who are hallucinating that I am claiming something is true or untrue. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. This is all just a logical examination of many theories. 2 witnesses, 5 and question mark, could be 4, not sure, drew diagrams generally matching the area and manner the vehicle was parked. Witness 6 advised he remembered seeing a dark-colored car parked at the old CPS building, describes it as possibly being a smart car. Witness 6 vehicle is seen leaving on Hoosier Harvester video at 2:28. 2:13, Abby and Libby encounter bridge guy. allegedly. Abby and Libby will not be seen alive again. 2:14, witness 4's vehicle is shown on the security camera footage leaving westbound from the trails. I mean, how coincidental that everybody's just magically leaving at the time this is going down. I mean, that's kind of weird. Also, whether this was planned or not planned, I mean, if let's say the juveniles or other people just happen to be walking around on the bridge, like, what is the plan for this abduction? Like, how does this all play out? It's just kind of weird. It's an unusually warm day. So even if there wasn't going to be a lot of people there might be an expectation. Nice warm day, might be people out on the trails. So the whole thing still doesn't make a lot of sense. So 2:14, witness 4's vehicle is shown on the security camera footage leaving westbound from the trails. She notes she sees a vehicle parked in an odd manner at the old CPS building. Witness 4 walked the trail, turned around at the bridge, and left in about 30 minutes. So the exact time that something's about to go down, she's leaving. 2:30 to 4:11, investigators identify other individuals on the trails or CR 300 North. None of these individuals saw a male subject matching the description of Richard Allen or bridge guy. At 3:30, Richard Allen says he left the trail. So that's interesting because there's other individuals who are on the trails and on the road. None of them saw him. 3:57, witness 7. So that's at the 3:57 p.m. Witness 7 advises that she was traveling east on 300 North and observed a male subject walking west away from the high bridge. He was wearing a blue-colored jacket and blue jeans and was muddy and bloody. Appeared he had been in a fight. So this is perhaps the smoking gun people are looking for. Because this is damning. I mean, this is crazy. This is huge. Now, obviously, we don't have any kind of facial feature identification. But what's strange is between 2:30 and 4:11, nobody saw this guy, other than witness 7 who was traveling east on 300 North. But investigators clearly state they did find people walking the trails at that time. They just happened not to see him. Okay. So continuing the post here, this doesn't even get to the unspent round that a lot of people have been critical of, but once you start looking at the timeline and Richard Allen's own words, the picture starts to become clear. Some additional notes: times that are estimates are indicated as such. They are estimates based on linear walking and thus could be off a bit in either direction. If you're stopping to take photos, etc., it could take longer. The trail is about a mile long. Richard Allen admits to being there for 2 hours, but only seeing the 3 juveniles. What was he doing and where was he that time? No witnesses see him after witness 4 sees him on the trail sometime after 1:46, unless you count the person who sees the bloody muddy guy at 3:57. There's serious missing time in his story. Not just his story, but what about all these other people on the trails? They don't see the guy? And what is if this is Richard Allen or a bridge guy, whoever, like, what is he thinking just randomly walking around muddy and bloody? And how come only one person saw that? The area that Richard Allen claims to have waited on a bench for a while is a straight shot up and down the trail. He could see if anybody was coming and where Abby and Libby were on the bridge. Okay, but what about the other side of the bridge? What about the trails underneath? What about the hangout spot by the bridge? I mean, it's all really weird. Like, what expectation is there that this guy could get away with this? If it's only one guy and if it did happen in this time frame as alleged. Okay, so let's go over a few more posts here in discussion regarding this affidavit. Palebot posted this, also on the Delphi murder subreddit here. I can't seem to wrap my head around the fact that virtually everything in the probable cause could have been determined within days of the crime. That's some crazy level incompetence. Am I missing something? I mean, you have a murder, a dude on a cell cam, and 4 or so witnesses about the dude, and the dude in the flesh came forward who not only matches but stated that he was the man the witnesses saw. His timeline matches the witnesses and the crime window. Store cams saw his car. Did Allen panic and put him at the scene through some irrational sense he could explain himself away? Clearly worked, WTF, but he probably could not have imagined this insane level of incompetence. If he's guilty, what other kinds of erratic things I wonder he did within the weeks after the murder? Am I wrong to think an arrest could have happened within days based on the most basic evidence that was handed to law enforcement? What are the legal consequences for the state if sealing the PC is a cover-up? Hell, even sealing the PC seems like another obviously incompetent decision. I mean, holding on to the bullet evidence seems like it wouldn't have been needed had law enforcement used Allen and the witness's own interviews to justify a search, found the gun, tested it, and arrested Richard Allen. Some posts here. What is so surprising to me is the fact that the FBI was involved pretty quickly. I unfortunately somewhat expect local Delphi PD to not be prepared to handle this type of crime and mess it up, but the fact that the FBI didn't put the pieces together is mind-boggling. Or here on Mindshock, as we would say, mind-shocking. And was the FBI, like, why did they still not, they weren't able to get the Marathon gas station footage? Again, the Marathon gas station, which Keegan Kline happened to search on his phone, and they can't get the surveillance. The FBI claimed that they couldn't get it, it wasn't there, or that it was deleted, erased, or couldn't be recovered in some capacity. Does anybody buy that? I went over that so many times, that just, there's so many things that just do not sit well with this case, like nothing adds up here. So, Lady Batman posted this. It seems I remember early on it was reported that the FBI was in town or nearby that day. So they were already there before the crime took place. A response here by Rocket Surgeon. They had 1 or 2 field agents involved from the beginning. The larger team of 20 plus did not arrive until after the bodies were found. Another post here. With all they had and very few people on the trail at that time, although allegedly there's conflicting reports, because early reports said that there were dozens of people coming and going on the trails in the middle of that unseasonably warm day. A small law enforcement should have been able to handle this case no problem investigating further everyone they talked to. A 7th grade class could have closed this case right away. Is that insulting to 6th and 5th and 4th graders? Another solid post here. This is just the probable cause affidavit. We don't know what law enforcement took from his residence. Follow-up post here. Supposedly there's a reliable source that says that something strong evidence was found in the fire pit at his residence. Apparently there are also people here criticizing Doug Carter. They're pointing to an earlier interview here, no link, where Doug Carter supposedly stated, quote, everyone who was there that day was ruled out, end quote. And then, of course, just recently at the Halloween press conference just after, he stated that they hadn't ruled out anybody. Anybody? So he didn't even rule out himself? I mean, I don't know. It's weird. Definitely weird. So the official overlooking is explained on the Murder Sheet podcast as follows, that a civilian FBI employee mislabeled or misfiled information about Mr. Allen when he was interviewed by police not long after the murders of Libby German and Abby Williams in Delphi, Indiana. As a result, Mr. Allen's name fell off the radar and the case was unsolved for more than 5 years. Finally, an investigator trawling through old files uncovered misplaced information, and the 50-year-old local man was arrested and charged with the murders. What happened here was some sort of clerical error or misfiling by a civilian employee of the FBI, Miss Kane told The Independent. It was not a malicious error, just an unfortunate mistake where a clerical error let the Richard Allen tip sink to the bottom of the whole file, essentially. And only recently, when someone was going through the old tips, they found that tip and thought we need to follow up. So when people ask why has it taken 5 years to loop back to Allen, that's what we've learned. Mr. Greenlee added it was not the result of someone calling in a tip or someone incarcerated speaking up now, but it was someone in law enforcement going through old tips and discovering information from 2017. So let's go over Richard Allen's attorneys here. So on Fort Wayne's NBC.com article here, December 2nd, 2022. He is innocent. Delphi suspect attorneys release statement on client's involvement in murder investigation. Defense lawyers for Richard Allen say their client has tried to help investigators over the 5 years since Libby German and Abby Williams were killed. Richard Allen's attorneys released a statement after receiving numerous media inquiries about the case and ongoing investigation. They described the statement as their thoughts about the investigation into Allen. The statement started by declaring their client's innocence, noting that he's never had any legal trouble in the past. He is innocent and completely confused as to why he has been charged with these crimes, the attorneys wrote. The attorneys wrote that it was Allen who notified police about his presence on the trails near the Monon High Bridge the day Libby and Abby went missing, that he tried to help the investigation on more than one occasion, including a conversation with a conservation officer about seeing 3 girls on the trail. The probable cause affidavit released this week mentioned 3 people who came across a man on the trail the day Libby and Abby disappeared. The attorneys also noted that Allen did not dispose of his guns, car, or clothes, all of which were mentioned in court documents in the 5 years since the girls' deaths. He did not alter his appearance. He did not relocate himself to another community. He did what any innocent man would do and continued with his normal routine, the statement read. So here is the statement here, a press release. We do not want to try this case in the media, and we intend to adhere to the Indiana rules of professional conduct that provide guidance on pretrial publicity. Clearly, none of those memos were received in the Stephen Avery case. However, the police and prosecutor's office have conducted many press conferences over the 5+ years of this investigation and following our client's arrest. On the other hand, Rick's ability to assert his innocence have been reduced to only one short post-hearing press conference. Accordingly, we feel it is appropriate, necessary, and within the bounds of our rules of professional conduct to make a few comments concerning the probable cause affidavit and Rick's innocence. Rick is a 50-year-old man who has never been arrested nor accused of any crime in his entire life. He is innocent and completely confused as to why he has been charged with these crimes. The police did not contact Rick after Libby and Abby went missing. Rather, Rick contacted the police and voluntarily discussed being on the trail that day. Like many people in Delphi, Rick wanted to help any way he could. Rick contacted the police to let them know that he had walked on the trail that day, as he often did. Without Rick coming forward, the police probably would not have had any way of knowing that he was on the trail that day. See, that's an interesting point. Although there are certain killers who like to become involved in the investigation and even taunt police. Again, I'm not alleging Allen is one of these, but I don't know if it's that black and white. Rick volunteered to meet with a conservation officer outside of the local grocery store to offer up details of his trip to the trail on the day in question. Rick tried to assist with the investigation and told the police that he did recall seeing 3 younger girls on the trail that day. His contact with the girls was brief and of little significance. Rick does not recall if this interaction with the conservation officer was tape recorded, but believes that the conservation officer scribbled notes on a notepad as Rick spoke to him. After Rick shared his information with law enforcement officials, he went back to his job at the local CVS and didn't hear from the police for more than 5 years. The next time Rick heard from police was in October 2022. This was approximately 2 weeks before a contested sheriff's election and within days of a federal lawsuit filed against the Carroll County Sheriff's Office by its former second-in-command, Michael Thomas. Probably all coincidental. In the lawsuit, Thomas claims that Thomas, had made suggestions and offered assistance in the investigation of a high-profile child homicide investigation, but those suggestions and offers were rejected by the sheriff. Thomas further claims that the sheriff and others in the department feared the disagreements with Thomas would become publicized as a result of the political campaign for sheriff. Thomas claims in the suit that he was ultimately demoted and replaced by Tony Liggett, who was later this year won the 2022 election for sheriff. Furthermore, Thomas claims he was also removed from other high-profile cases. Rick was ultimately arrested on or about October 28, 2022. Wait, so they don't know? In the 5 years since Rick volunteered to provide information to the police, Rick did not get rid of his vehicles or his guns and did not throw out his clothing. He did not alter his appearance. He did not relocate himself to another community. He did what any innocent man would do and continued with his normal routine. Although a certain percentage of guilty people could theoretically also do that. The probable cause affidavit seems to suggest that a single magic bullet is proof of Rick's guilt. It is a bit premature to engage in any detailed discussions regarding the veracity of the evidence until more discovery is received, but it is safe to say that the discipline of tumor identification ballistics is anything but a science. The entire discipline has been under attack in courtrooms across the country as being unreliable and lacking any scientific validity. We anticipate a vigorous legal and factual challenge to any claims by the prosecution as to the reliability of its conclusions concerning the single magic bullet. And we'll probably have to do a dedicated episode on this, but the way that you would show that is by having several different model guns eject a shell, and would different guns show the same signature if it was the same model, same year manufacture, etc., etc. I mean, obviously that's the scientific experiment to show that. On Rick's behalf, we argue that to have the PCA unsealed, Rick has nothing to hide. As importantly, we were hoping that we'd receive tips that would assist us in proving his innocence. Not surprisingly, we have been inundated with tips from a variety of sources, all of which will be vetted by our team. Although it is the burden of the prosecutor to prove Rick's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, the defense team looks forward to conducting its own investigation concerning Rick's innocence. We appreciate those that have reached out to support his cause. The prosecutor mentioned at the last hearing his belief that others may have been involved in the killing, yet there was no mention in the PCA about a second suspect involved in the killing. The defense is confused by such discrepancies in the investigation and will be in a better position to respond as more discovery is received. Rick Allen owned a Ford Focus in February 2017. His Ford Focus is not in any way similar to the distinctive look of the PT Cruiser or smart car that was described by witnesses. It seems that the CCSD is trying to bend facts to fit their narrative. At this point in time, we have received very limited information about the case and look forward to having something more to view, that which was offered up in the sparse PCA. Moving forward, it is our intent to scrutinize the discovery as it is received and give the necessary attention to the volumes of tips we are receiving. To the extent we continue to discover information that points to Rick's innocence, we will offer up this information to the public, so long as we are not prohibited from doing so as a result of the recent request by the prosecutor for a gag order or by the Indiana Rules of Professional Conduct. So there you have it. That's the response here. I mean, it's curious. It's pretty curious. So the next hearing is January 13th, 2023, where discussing gag orders and such will be done. So that's curious. So Allen himself came forward. Now, some people that would believe he's guilty, he might have come forward because he realized people would identify him and it would look suspect if he didn't come forward. Is that a possibility? I don't know, just throwing that out there. Another post here in the Delphi subreddit, Delphi murder subreddit, regarding the PCA, can the state omit extra evidence they have against Allen and only provide enough evidence to get the affidavit signed? Just wondering why Kelsey German petitioned so hard to keep this sealed. Responses here, they just have to provide enough to establish probable cause. Definitely don't put everything they have in it. No clue why she wanted it sealed. Other responses here, yes, no prosecutor worth his or her salt would throw their full hand in an arrest warrant. There's more to be seen here. Which would explain a lot of things. And of course, if there's a whole page redacted, who else knows what's on it? Another post here by Wis Corrupted. Evidence they have that is not in the PCA. There's definitely a lot more evidence that has been found or is still being processed. One, he still had the Ford Focus he drove that day, and most of those cars have cloth seats with foam underneath that would be perfect for holding DNA, such as blood. Two, the gun was obviously handled by him during the murder, so there is possibly DNA on the gun, even if it is just from him touching it with bloody hands. Three, his cell phone data is obviously being looked at, judging by the PCA, so GPS data and cell tower pings are definitely going to play a role. That's a good point. Four, they confiscated many things from his house that aren't mentioned in the PCA, such as small books and a shoebox. They also dug up parts of his yard and a fire pit, so that may play a role. Five, they almost definitely have shoe or boot prints from the scene, so they can determine the shoe size of the killer, and since he is so short, he probably wears a very small shoe. I don't know about that last one, though, because if the searchers... I mean, there's even rumors that if the searchers found the bodies in the water and they pulled them up onto shore, that's one rumor. But even if that's not true, whoever found the body, if there was more than one person walking around that scene, which there appears to have been, how would you know which boot prints were from whom? An interesting post here. Some people are disputing that some of this was like an intended sexual assault that escalated. But an interesting post here from Fresca Esca. I just really don't think this guy would assault two girls from his tiny town and think he could get away with it without silencing the victims. They would see him at CVS or around and be able to identify him. So what's weird, though, did he just randomly snap that day? And previously, in terms of profiling, because this is Valentine's Day time, people were speculating this is someone that might have had a recent breakup, etc. From all accounts, I mean, he's still married, he's married at the time, still married now. I mean, does that match the initial profile? And of course, the profile could be wrong. I mean, obviously, we don't know anything for sure here. Mary Jane Vermont posted this regarding at which point he decided he was going to kill. Mary Jane Vermont thinks this before he got there. So only 2 minutes ahead and he went straight to the bridge. Lies have a grain of truth. He said he was looking down at the stock ticker. I think he was looking down at the alert that they were at the trails. He knew where they were going. It's still kind of weird, though, how someone could think they could get away with this in broad daylight in the middle of the... I mean, it's just weird. It's weird, especially a guy that lived there. If this was like some trucker passing through that was going to be gone in an hour, I mean, that seems to make more sense, but... An interesting post here by Generals 2022. We've all heard that the crime scene would have been bloody, but apparently after the bodies were removed, no one who went there ever saw any blood anywhere. Meaning the police took away all the leaves on the forest floor for analysis. If he spit or left behind any other biological materials on the leaves thinking that was safe, he would have left his DNA at the scene. The police must have analyzed every leaf at the crime scene if there was never any blood left behind after the site was processed. Interesting point there, too, and as always, whether local police or FBI, obviously in many cases they play things close to the vest. They might have DNA, they might have saliva, they might have a lot of things. Again, it would be difficult to prove, is it from the searchers who discovered the bodies and possibly even touched the bodies or somebody else. But if you have all the identities of everybody that was there and handled the bodies, and then there's yet another DNA sample that's unexplained, then, you know, that's a step in that direction. Others are also speculating that this conservation officer report somehow got lost. Now, again, people can say it was intentional or it's not intentional. Either way, apparently it was lost, which is why nobody followed up on it. But if it's really true that there were only a couple of people on the trails, how could they not account for this small handful of people? And then also, what about flannel shirt guy? Another poster, DFP Parker 78 posted this. How do you keep the gun and the clothes? The incompetence on both sides is disappointing. Unless, of course, it's not Richard Allen and those weren't the clothes, in which case maybe he would keep them, I don't know. Or if he's just that insane. That could also theoretically explain it. Another interesting post here. The only thing I can think is that they were so focused on Ron Logan as the prime suspect, the Richard Allen info got buried in a huge pile of leads. I'm sure there were others in the park that day. From the info in the PCA, it looks like they did use cell phone data to determine some of the people in the area and questioned them, Richard Allen included. Depending on when he was questioned, perhaps not all the evidence in the PCA has been discovered and therefore his statement forgotten. Either way, it's shoddy detective work to blame. Another post by Deduction Power here. I now know why Richard Allen's lawyers were not impressed with their evidence against him. I really hope they have DNA in the crime scene. I don't think it's Richard Allen's, though. If they do, they would have got that in the PCA, but they only got that bullet as the strongest linked to Richard Allen. The DNA they got must be from that accomplice, which curiously was never mentioned in the PCA unless that accomplice is the masked one. Don't witnesses in the PCA have two different clothing definitions? One was wearing jeans, one was wearing black clothing. Yeah, that's a good point, unless they were confused and they really only saw one guy. But, I mean, if there was a second guy, would he really have been walking the trails? Or would he have been elsewhere? Some more posts here regarding the supposed suspect who walked on Route 300 North, a distance of 0.8 miles from the cemetery to the old CPS building with muddy and bloody clothes. The eyewitness account from the PCA has me absolutely floored. It raises so many questions. Was his actual exit strategy to just walk back to his vehicle on Route 300, covered in blood and water and mud, or was his original plan that day something different and his exit strategy was hastily determined? If he planned to kill the girls on the north side of the creek, why not park somewhere closer? And if he wanted to park far enough away to not raise suspicion, why not have a better exit plan? I don't mean this to come off as a hot take, but is this guy just a complete idiot? Some responses here. He could have gone through the woods that parallel the MHB trail and then came out farther up Route 300 North and then had only a few minutes of exposure. I find it hard to believe he walked directly out of the woods into the cemetery and then walked 4/5 of a mile showing off his muddied and bloodied clothes for anyone to see. And you can count me one of those who, when I saw what street Richard Allen lived on and its proximity to Bridge Creek, that had to have been his escape route. Nice hidden area. He could change clothes into some jogging outfit and then bury the bloodied ones. He hops out on the street that connects from his to the creek, then he's just another local getting some exercise. Figured he probably waved at some neighbor or chatted them up to give him an alibi for that afternoon even. But instead, he was a complete dunce, parked his own vehicle where multiple witnesses could see it and report it. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point, because if he lives that close, why is he driving all over the place and then walking all over the place? Yeah, I mean, this is kind of weird. Another post here. I'm thinking he was somehow tipped off, maybe via connections to the Anthony Shots account, or Keegan Kline himself. And law enforcement being so adamant about others being involved seems to support this theory of being tipped off. Or maybe he was stalking their social media accounts in advance about the victims planning on going to the bridge that day. I mean, he parked his car far away from the normal parking areas and did so in a way that hid his plates. When he sat on a platform looking at the fish, he was likely waiting for Abby and Libby to arrive. It just seems very premeditated in my opinion, and not many people actually walk all the way across the bridge to the dead end. He either did this dozens upon dozens of times, hoping for the perfect victims to fall into his trap, or he got incredibly lucky, or he knew they were going to be walking across that bridge to meet a hunk that drove a Lambo, i.e. Anthony Shots Catfish. I'd be really surprised if we learned that he did not park at that old CBS building that day, knowing fully well that he'd be murdering two specific targets. I think he must have knew he'd be committing murder. If he was planning a sexual assault, it's way too small of a town for the victims to live and not get identified soon afterwards. From the video, it appears he wasn't trying to hide his face, so he must have knew in advance that the victims weren't going to be capable of identifying him afterwards. I mean, there are still more things that don't really make sense, because if he's on social media, etc., and he sees the phone out, I mean, how would he not know that they could have been recording him and also be live streaming or whatever, and he still does whatever he does, if Bridge Guy is this guy, and if Bridge Guy's acting alone. T. Mike Bond here posted something pretty mind-shocking. Bitter Beat Poet, who had some great insight onto the case and possibly some inside info, theorized that the girls ran after the perp fell going down the hill. He thought perhaps Abby fell too. When the girls ran, the perp was able to grab Abby's leg and pull off her shoe. He then incapacitated her, and Libby tried to assist her friend. Libby then tried to flee, and he had her by the jacket, and she let him pull it off, but he later caught her, perhaps on the north side of the creek. If it was Richard Allen and he had a gun, perhaps he was having trouble catching Libby and cycled the weapon to get her to stop, which is how the bullet got discharged. I also wonder if Abby was dead on the south side of Deer Creek. I think Bitter Beat Poet said something to that effect. She could have been lying in the driveway lane that runs through there. Then, after he killed Libby, he went back and carried Abby over to where Libby was to conceal their bodies. I have no idea if this is even close to correct. The sad thing is, if one would have ran down the west side of the hill and the other the east, and neither went to aid the other, at least one, if not both, would be alive today. I don't think there was ever a chance the perp, if he had a gun, would have shot them to stop or kill them. There were too many people around that would have heard it. But theoretically, they would have also heard screams and such. So, yeah, I mean, again, the timeline here, there's just so many different variables here. None of them seem to really work. Like, the proper alignment of variables, I'm not sure if it's been found yet. I mean, perhaps law enforcement know. Perhaps law enforcement have all the details, and when it comes out at trial, it'll all add up, or perhaps not. Another post here. I honestly think Richard Allen did not think he would get away with the murders. I think he was emotional or angry and didn't care. He committed the crime in public and didn't really make any attempts to cover it up. Walking on the road covered in blood screams to me this is a guy who didn't care and was expecting he would be arrested. He never got rid of the gun or jacket he was wearing, came forward at being at the crime scene, even admitted all these years later that he was wearing the same clothes as Bridge Guy. 5 years later, Richard Allen probably doesn't want to be in prison, but at the time of the murder, Richard Allen could have just been angry and had just been in a fight or emotionally snapped and was like, expletive it, I don't care. I don't think there was a plan. I think Richard Allen went to the bridge to kill or commit sexual assault, but nothing specific. Now, that actually is more of an explanation, because if he really doesn't care about any of this, I mean, that actually explains these actions more than a lot of other things, especially if he was expected to be arrested right after doing it. Some more posts here also speculating on the nature of the fight. Because if there was some kind of fight, they're stating he looked like he had been in a fight. Is that a result of being bloody in the creek and moving bloody bodies as opposed to an actual fight? Southern Dig posted this. The implication of their clothes being found down creek from them, according to the PCA. Trigger warning, I think it can mean two scenarios. One, I'm so afraid that means they were sexually assaulted, which is disgusting, but means that there is likely some kind of DNA from the murderer, and hopefully it'll lead to a conviction. Or two, they fought for their lives and may have got his fingerprints, blood, or hair on them, and their clothes were taken off post-mortem and thrown into the river as a way to take off DNA evidence. What are your thoughts on this new information? And people are stating here, the Ron Logan search warrant affidavit states no visible signs of a struggle or fight. So, as always, plenty of unanswered questions here in the Delphi case. And hopefully more questions will be answered shortly. And if there is more than one perpetrator, there will be more evidence to that. I mean, there's just so many conflicting statements from all directions here. I mean, that's really why it's so tough. I mean, if there was some kind of consistency, something can be deduced here, but just the level of conflicting statements from all sides and sources, I mean, what can you make of that? The Mindshock listeners can leave their thoughts, theories, opinions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind in the comment section. If you enjoyed the podcast, want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.